This is Pod
Cast.
Racing.
Hello there, and welcome to a brand new episode of my podcast Racing. Today, I have a very special guest and friend on the podcast today. Another friend who hasn't been on the podcast yet. Like me, she's also a fellow film lover and aspiring filmmaker. Please welcome my good friend Jamie. How are you doing, Jamie?
Hey Colton, I'm good. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you on. Yeah, obviously, many people listening don't know this, but we helped each other with short films. We attended the same school, and for a class where we had to make a short film, we helped each other with each other's short films, and that was an interesting experience.
Yeah, it definitely was to help each other with each other's senior thesis films, and it was a great experience, I'd say.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
fun.
Through making these films, obviously, before making these films, I had some knowledge of how filmmaking works and how Hollywood works, but actually making short films and directing my own short film definitely helped, for lack of a better term, broaden my filmmaking knowledge, I guess. I don't really like that phrase, but yeah, so even though it wasn't a completely happy experience, it was overall a very good experience, and I definitely learned a lot. And it makes me more excited for filmmaking. But I want to ask you, Jamie, what is your favorite aspect about the filmmaking process?
My favorite aspect of the filmmaking process is definitely the writing process, like putting together a script and a story and whatnot. I've always been somebody who's into like creating stories. Originally, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an author, and I liked making up like my own little stories and stuff like that. So filmmaking was kind of the step above being an author, so like people could see your stories and witness them.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, I also really like making stories as well. I'd like to think that I'm a creative person. I definitely have a vivid imagination. Whenever I read a book, I can imagine like scene for scene, like detail for detail, like based on what the author is writing. I can imagine that in my head and add like my own little details as well. Personally, my favorite aspect of filmmaking is the directing part. Not because I get to tell people what to do.
You want to be the boss of everyone.
I mean, as cool as that sounds, no. The main reason why I love directing is just I don't know, like the director, he or she gets to basically like he's the main person, he or she's the main person that helps create this new world that this film is showing and representing, and it's just so cool to me that basically when you're making a film, you're creating something.
Hmm.
It's also a very collaborative process, and me definitely as much as I like making up stories and writing, it's definitely not one of my strong suits. When all the scripts I've written so far, I've had to refine the dialogue like 50 times because I do not write good dialogue at all. But when it comes to directing, I'm able to, even if my script isn't that good, I'm able to convey the ideas much better, not just to my actors and crew, but through the camera and through what's being portrayed on the screen. And
Hmm.
all those and a whole variety of other reasons is why personally I love directing. That directing is my favorite aspect of filmmaking. But I do think that writing is the most important aspect of filmmaking because yeah, I've watched movies that were good or decent, but they were prevented from being great or amazing due to weak scripts. And
Hmm.
the script is definitely the most important part, in my opinion, of making a film or a show or whatever. In fact, the legendary Alfred Hitchcock, he has a quote: "To make a great film, you need three things: the script, and the script." And he's not wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
the script is basically the skeleton, the bones of
Yeah, the blueprint of
the
the film.
blueprint of a film. And if that's wrong or shaky from the start, you're not gonna have a really. I mean, you can still you can there. I have seen directors make good or competent films out of bad scripts, but if you want to have a film that like will be nominated at the Oscars or something like that, then or be really acclaimed or memorable in people's minds, then you really need to make sure that your script is like almost flawless when you're going into the
Yeah,
actual.
for the script, you can kind of think of it as a blueprint for like a building. Like, sure, you could build your structure and then make it look flashy on the outside, make it look really cool, but then on the inside, like, it has a really weak structure. So once people go in there, it kind of just falls apart.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like though, I feel like Hollywood, unfortunately, more times than not, often tends to forget that the script is the most important part of the filmmaking process. I mean, you'll get like script rewrites. You'll get, basically just like studios like demanding that like extra scenes be added in or extra like details be added in that aren't necessary, but they think that it is necessary for the sake of making a buck. And
Hmm.
I want to ask you, this is probably, and I think I already know what your answer is, but I want to ask you, do you think that Hollywood is going too far in sacrificing good storytelling or tampering too much with the script for the sake of pandering or doing well at the box office?
Oh, yes, 100%. Hollywood definitely tries to make like their movies like they want everybody to watch them, they want to appeal to everybody. But then in order to appeal to everybody, you have to like overkill your script with all these different details, all these other things happening, and then it kind of just becomes a jumbled mess and kind of becomes this big like cluster of nonsense for everybody when they watch it.
You can tell when a studio really tampers with a movie. You can tell, like they no matter how hard the producers, director, who actors, whoever will try to hide it, you can tell based almost all the time whenever a studio really tampers with a movie, and it's almost always whenever a studio comes in and interferes, it's almost always decreases the quality of the film or ruins the film for me.
100%.
And one thing that specific studios, but specifically Disney, will do or has been doing lately that really annoys me is Disney tries so hard to put in representation for whether it be in Onward they had that lesbian cop, that one-eyed creature that was a cop, and she mentioned that she had a girlfriend, and but it was only in like one scene, and where they could cut it out so that they could submit it to foreign markets where they don't allow gay stuff to be shown in the media. And speaking, and also with Disney, the most recent Star Wars movie, The Rise of Skywalker, they had that brief clip of the two female rebels kissing, and that was only like 2 seconds long, and they could cut that out. Beauty and the Beast with LeFou, like basically saying like, oh yeah, this guy is a gay character, and oh yeah, we're totally being, we're totally
Yep,
have
yep.
positive representation, but then in the movie it's just him dancing with a guy for like 2 seconds. And with all this stuff, it just annoys me. Basically Disney tries to make everybody happy because they
Hmm.
include brief moments to try to have a win with the LGBT community, while at the same time not alienating their more conservative audiences. And they try to have a win with both, but then they end up losing with both because conservative audiences will get upset. Oh, all this gay stuff in these movies, ew. And
Hmm.
then the LGBT community will be like, "You're not doing
That's
enough,
it.
Disney." I want to ask you real quick though. Speaking of like representation, though, we'll get back into studios messing up, but I want to ask you, why is it important to have inclusivity and positive representation, specifically? Well, I mean, well, for everybody, but specifically in the LGBT community in media.
Inclusivity is really important because from a young age, people watch these movies or TV shows and they always identify with this one specific character that kind of becomes their role model. A lot of movies are catered towards, I'd say, boys or little boys. Like with superhero movies, they always say, oh, I want to be like Superman. I want to be like Captain America. Those are their role models because they can identify with those people. But when you grow up as a kid who might be questioning their sexuality, you don't see any of that. You see these straight couples, you see like just a man and a woman, and everyone's like, oh, that's the perfect love story, etc. But whenever there's this gay character that's introduced, they always tend to be over the top, or like they get bullied a lot, and that kind of gives a really bad message to somebody who's growing up in the LGBT community. And you kind of just want to be told that, oh, I exist in this world, it's okay to be me, type of thing.
I think it is, growing up, a lot of movies, have like stereotypes, and I feel like a lot of people, don't realize, a lot of moviegoers who might have watched these movies with these negative stereotypes, they don't, realize it because they've watched these movies as kids, and then growing up, they have all this nostalgia that kind of blinds them from seeing like the flaws in these films. And I think that that's a factor. I don't want to change the topic too much, but that is definitely a factor as to why the Disney live action remakes do so well at the box office, is because people are blinded by nostalgia and they just love the original story so much that they don't realize that the product that they're getting is ultimately inferior compared to the original animated classics. But even like many of these original like classics, they'll have like stereotypes of like different races or people of color, or like you said, over the top, flamboyant in a bad way, gay characters. And
who are usually like the butt of everybody's jokes.
Yeah, and and all that is bad. But I feel like, I don't know, I feel like many studios nowadays are like ashamed of that, and they're trying to do the opposite of that. But I don't know, do you think that they try a little bit too hard in the opposite direction, where many people say, oh, like politics, I don't want like politics in movies, and oh, I don't want to see this stuff in movies. Do you agree or disagree with the idea that maybe like Hollywood is going a bit too far now with inclusivity and representation in their movies?
Yes and no. Definitely they are going overboard with some of the things, but something like they got to understand that this type of stuff is around them their entire lives. Like with those people that you were saying, oh, I don't want this and this, like why is there so much gay stuff? Why is there so much like people of color main characters? Like this is stuff we grew up with our entire lives. Like they say that they don't want gay couples on kids' TV shows, but they've had straight couples kissing on kids' TV shows their entire lives. So what difference does that kind of make? But you are right that they do go overboard some of the times, that they are making up for like their past of not being inclusive enough, so they're trying to appeal to all audiences at the same time, and it kind of just goes overboard because they don't know how to correctly write it.
Yeah, I think that if you're going to have representation, a positive, so-called positive representation or inclusivity in your movies, then you have to know how to do it right and not in a super obvious, obnoxious way. Like two very recent superhero movies with female leads that had representation in it, one good, one bad. Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel. I feel like Wonder Woman did a real. Now, to many of my listeners out there, what I'm about to say is my opinion. Do not accept it as fact, because I'm a man commenting on good female representation. So, again, this is my opinion. Nothing of what I'm saying is a fact, because I am a man. But I feel like Wonder Woman did a really good job of not just having positive representation for women out there and crafting a good like female role model and who can be very inspiring to little girls. But she was also like not that stuff is definitely in the Wonder Woman movie, but she that movie also included that movie also it wasn't trying to be like basically say like oh yeah like it was saying that women are awesome and badass, but it wasn't putting down men. And
Hmm.
also yeah that I feel like there are some recent movies where when saying that oh yeah like female empowerment or gay empowerment, then there are some movies that say that by basically portraying like every male character as an a-hole, or every like
Hmm.
straight person as bigoted or something like that. And
Yeah.
I I really don't like when they do that. I think that that's bad. Actually, ironically, by those films, by trying to be inclusive, they're also being alienating to another group that could be learning from these types of movies. For example, the female Ghostbusters movie with Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy. By trying to be all about female empowerment, they portrayed
Hmm.
every male character, literally every
They were
male
all
character,
dumb. They were all so dumb.
as idiots or jerks. And
Yes.
with Wonder Woman, you have a balance where basically, you'll have Wonder Woman is awesome and a badass in her own right, but her male companion and later love interest, Steve Trevor, he's not, completely useless. And he
Yeah,
even
he's not a
saves,
jerk. He's
yeah, and he even saves her in a couple of scenes, and he's noble. And basically, I think Wonder Woman did a really good job in terms of representation and inclusivity because they featured a Native American character. They featured a Muslim guy who wanted to be an actor, but then I don't know if you remember this in the movie. He says that I want to be an actor, but there are no actors that look like me, so I'm a soldier.
mm,
That's all I can do. And
yeah.
I think that Wonder Woman is a good film, is a really good film on its own, but when you also add in, factor in the representation aspect of it, I think they really do a good job of that. Whereas Captain Marvel is not as bad at this as the female Ghostbusters, but I feel like Captain Marvel, like which again is from Disney. Captain Marvel went with the oh yeah like this woman is so awesome and powerful, but they don't show, but she doesn't feel like a real person. Like Wonder Woman, like, I'm not saying Wonder Woman is perfect, but Wonder Woman was an interesting character because she was a badass, but she wasn't perfect. She had flaws.
Mhm.
She needed to have character development in the movie. She needed to learn stuff. And but with Captain Marvel, first of all, she's way too powerful. Like and how she got her powers is really dumb as well. And also she's they make her too like, oh, I'm the coolest and oh, I'm so
I'm
awesome and
awesome. I'm
powerful.
a woman. I'm woman empowerment.
Yeah, exactly. And like Captain, like these are all gonna be like Disney movies I'm mentioning, but like
Oh
Captain
yeah,
Marvel,
Disney is a big offender of all of
yeah.
this. They're gonna come up a lot later too.
Yeah. I mentioned in a previous podcast episode, but like Captain Marvel and the most recent Mulan live action remake, both of them, my
Mhm.
biggest issue with both of those movies is that the main character they portray the main characters as too powerful, too too strong. Where if they go through character development in their movies, then it doesn't feel earned, and because they're already too powerful to begin with, and the lessons that they learn aren't real compelling lessons
Yeah,
because like Captain Marvel and Mulan in the live action remake essentially stay the same character throughout. Whereas with Wonder Woman, yes, Wonder Woman is still powerful throughout the movie. She is still noble, selfless, strong, but she does have character development in the movie, and she's an interesting character. Whereas I don't think Captain Marvel or Mulan in the live action remake are interesting characters.
Have you ever heard the quote, "Write what you know"?
I think so. Yeah, yeah. I think I've heard that quote.
Yeah, so like a lot of people say when you're writing something and you're writing something that might not be realistic, usually say like write what you know because that's the best thing you're gonna write. If you write something that you're not like you can't relate to at all, it's gonna come out kind of bad. So if, for example, a man is writing a script about women empowerment, it's not gonna appeal to women in the way they want it to. It's just going to be, oh, I'm a woman, I'm badass, I don't need a man. But in reality, like that's not what women are looking for in a film. And a lot of times, like straight men, they will write movies that have a gay character in it, and the gay character is the worst written character in the movie. And I think Mulan, the new live action Mulan, was also written by a white person.
All the writers, there was a female writer, but I think two of the writers were men, all of them were white, writing a movie about
Yes.
China. And it's just
Yes.
like, and then with a woman, I mean, granted there was a woman director, but she was white. Basically, it was all white.
There's a lot of controversy behind the Mulan film, but that's a story for another day.
Speaking of controversy, though, that I don't know if you've heard this movie, The Kids Are Alright, with Annette Bening and Julianne Moore. That movie.
Yes. Mark Ruffalo is also in
Mark
it, right?
Ruffalo.
Yes, I've seen that movie.
Yeah, that movie is about, a lesbian couple, and complications ensue when the sperm donor comes, but played by Mark Ruffalo.
Oh, I have so much to say about that movie.
That movie is directed by a lesbian woman, but she co-wrote the script with a straight white man. So
yes, but also, so she is a lesbian woman, and then there's a straight man, but the one character is bisexual. And she winds up cheating on the one. Are they married or they're just dating? I forget.
I think they got married. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so, well, basically she cheats on her significant other with the sperm donor, and it kind of portrays as bisexual. There's always like that stereotype that bisexuals are more likely to cheat because they're attracted to both. And that kind of was a really bad representation for a bisexual woman in that movie.
Yeah, I don't think that representation. I mean, again, I'm commenting on this as a straight man, but yeah, I don't think that the representation that was quite what it could have been. And I do agree for the most part with the quote that you said, "Write what you know." But I think that there are rare instances where you can make something that you like that's not related to you, but still like be a great movie and also good representation. For example, the Natalie Portman movie Black Swan is directed by a white man, and the script is written by all men, and yet it predominantly features female characters, and actually has surprisingly good commentary on how hard it is to be a woman in any industry, because unfortunately it's very likely that you're gonna be objectified no matter like what you do, how hard it is to be a woman, and basically and some women feel like they have to push themselves beyond their limits to the point of hurting themselves just to impress their superiors or something like that. And the superior, Natalie Portman's superior in the Black Swan movie is a white man. So despite the fact that Black Swan was directed and written by all men, and Wonder Woman was written by all men too, I think that both those movies did a good job with representation, with like showing the female perspective in a good way.
Yeah, I think the only reason why those movies did work though is because I feel like the production team, the director, the writer, they actually put themselves in that character's shoes before writing the character. Like a lot of people will just be like, okay, I think I'm gonna write a character about this black gay man. I'm a white straight male. Let's just make them super flamboyant and stuff like that. they don't do like either their research, or they don't get like second opinions from somebody who may know that character better than themselves.
There are writers and directors out there who might have good intentions with with making because I think that the people behind the kids are right. I don't think that they were being malicious about it.
Yeah, no, it was a good movie. It was just that one little thing was like, oh, that stereotype was there.
Yeah, like with the kids are right. I feel like they did lean a little bit too much on like stereotypes and all that. But and there were scenes where like there were moments where the characters didn't feel real. They didn't feel like real people. It like there are definitely movies where scenes don't feel like real. It just feels like they're pushing forward a message or agenda. I think that the people who say, "Oh, Hollywood has an agenda," "Oh, gay stuff in like movies like bad and all that," I think that those people overall are being ridiculous. But
Yeah, they need
occasionally,
a reality check that this exists in the real world.
occasionally though, I do think that Hollywood, especially Disney, can be a bit misguided with their representation, and
Yes.
I think that I think that unfortunately like studios, something that I really like about movies is that movies can feel real, like that's I love movies so much because I can not just with the imaginative and visual aspects of filmmaking, but also I can basically be teleported into these worlds and feel like I'm actually among the characters. And I feel like studios, when they interfere or when they like when they interfere, they can take away the biggest crime, in my opinion, of whenever a studio interferes is that they take away that ability to basically completely submerge myself into these worlds and feel like these characters are real. In a lot of movies where I could tell that there was like studio intervention and all that. Like I don't get sucked into these worlds. I unfortunately I acknowledge a bit in the back of my head. I'm like, oh, this is a movie, and clearly like the studio tampered with this movie a lot. Like certain movies
Hmm.
like Suicide Squad, I all the characters felt like characters. They didn't feel like real people to me,
Yeah.
to some people will be like, well, obviously they're not real people. One of them is literally a crocodile, and I'm like, yeah, but like, I'm not saying the Marvel movies are perfect, but almost every Marvel movie, I'm able to submerge myself into the world and feel like I'm actually and learn from and feel like I'm actually amongst a
Yeah,
talking
they're actually
raccoon.
relatable. They have like actual features that you can see in yourself or like people you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like Hollywood just when they take over the writing process, like especially like with, for example, like whenever like Hollywood, a studio will late into production suddenly like say like, oh, you need to add this is the new fad, so like you need to add this. I,
Hmm.
yeah, I just and then they'll hire like extra writers to add in stuff like without the full knowledge of like the producers or the director or the original writers.
Hmm.
Just Hollywood. I think Hollywood really needs to stop like doing that.
Yeah, so like a lot of the times, like every movie, whether it's clear or not, has a set audience that they're trying to reach. Like, say it's this bubble, and over here there's another bubble that they're not reaching out to. They might have people that intersect like within these two bubbles of categories of people that they're trying to reach out to. So they decide, okay, let's add this type of character to attract that audience to make this bigger bubble that we're trying to reach out to.
Yeah, and I know we're picking on Disney a lot in this video, but Disney is at least currently the biggest offender of
Oh
this.
yeah,
Where well, okay, so I'll stop picking on Disney for a second, and
but
I'll
we'll
pick.
definitely come back to Disney.
Yeah, no, you're definitely gonna have to come back to Disney. It's inevitable because of how many
I'm
times
not done with them yet.
how many times they've messed up lately. But I mean, Sony isn't perfect. Sony definitely has its problems as well. I mentioned earlier the female Ghostbusters movie where they tried too hard to appeal to women that they alienated a lot of men as well.
Hmm.
And I think that was bad. Sony's Venom movie, basically, Venom started out as this like concept and idea of basically just having it not really being a superhero movie, but more of just a movie about this guy that needed to overcome not just his inner demons, but a literal demon attached to him. And then Sony interfered, and with reshoots and rewrites, it turned into a cliche superhero movie with just a bunch of action scenes.
Yeah.
Like Tom Hardy signed on originally because he was interested in the idea of basically playing an a-hole who learns to feel like similar to Iron Man. Iron Man is an a-hole who learns to not be an a-hole through adversity, not just in his own inner demons, but also represented through a physical adversity as well. And but then, through reshoots and rewrites, it turned into just a cliche superhero product, not even a
Hmm.
movie, a product.
Yeah.
And another another Sony movie, the Men in Black reboots. Well, they call it a sequel, but it's basically a reboot. It's with Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson.
I haven't seen that one yet, but I.
Don't don't. It's not good. Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth had great chemistry in Thor Ragnarok, and yet in Men in Black International, the chemistry wasn't there, and it
Mhm.
was because the actors were just tired of all the behind the scenes problems, and Sony either ignoring certain aspects of the filmmaking that they felt was important, or interfering too much
Mhm.
in other aspects that they felt like Sony shouldn't have interfered in, and it got to a point where there was so much rewriting going on that Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson literally hired their own writers to write dialogue for them, and that's bad.
Yeah, so like one thing I have to say about that, like of course it is important for like little girls and like just women in general, seeing these female characters as leading roles in these like action movies, superhero movies, etc. And then you have this male audience that goes, oh, like they're just really angry that now
Yeah,
there's a
right.
woman in place of that male that used to be the main character. But like obviously that's not acceptable, but at the same time you have a studio that doesn't know how to write that female character appropriately for the men to be like, oh, okay, maybe that was a good idea. They'll just watch the movie, be angry at the beginning, and then it's not a good movie in general, so they remain angry at it and they're like, see, this is why they shouldn't have women as these characters, just leave it the way it is, stop ruining these movies type thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not completely against, studio providing feedback for, because like I do think that a lot, like 99% of the creative freedom should go to the filmmakers, but I understand, studios, they need to they don't just they need to make money, and I understand it's a business, but I feel like, unfortunately, like the many studio executives will forget that, well, will put like the business needs over the creative needs, and
Mm-hmm.
and actually, it ironically, in some instances, will end up hurting their business as well. There are definitely examples out there of a studio interfering with the film for the sake of trying to make more money and pander to more general audiences, but then
Mm-hmm.
general audiences won't like the pandering, and then they'll end up making, and then word of mouth will go around, and then less people will see it.
Yes. One thing that I would like to talk about is this show I used to work on. It was called Tommy. It's a CBS show, and it's about this woman who is the first female police chief of Los Angeles. And this show is like a show that is all about inclusivity. They want to target all these different audiences, and that's good that they want to reach out to all these people, but they did it in the worst way possible. So the main character is Tommy, the female police chief. She is
Right.
also a gay woman. She also has a child who is mixed. I believe her father was black. And then they also, like, the moral of like every episode, like the first episode was about immigration. and all these things are acceptable and need to be spoken about and present in the media, but they did it in a way that was like really forced. Like they introduced all this stuff within the first 5 minutes of the first episode, and you learned nothing more about her throughout the show. And people didn't like that because they're like, oh, this is forced, this isn't realistic, why is this being shown to me? And the show got canceled because of bad ratings, I believe.
There's another CBS show called God Friended Me that I started watching at first, but then when they introduced the lesbian character, it didn't feel organic. Like it felt forced to me. I really like when LGBT representation is more subtle, or like if they're gonna have like, you know, a gay character suffering, it has to be in the right historical context. Like for example, I'll mention two movies with very prominent LGBT themes and characters: Call Me by Your Name and Portrait of a Lady on Fire. What I love most about Call Me by Your Name is that the main character is gay, but he's never picked on, or you know, he doesn't have prejudice thrown against him for being gay. In fact, when his father finds out, he's all for it. You know, he's basically, you know, all like, oh, you love who you love and all that stuff. But what I love about Calling Me by Your Name was that it was simply just a coming of age tale about a young boy who falls in love with his father's, who's a professor in Italy, his father's apprentice. And it's a simple story about a man discovering love and all that stuff, who just so happens to be falling in love with a man. So, and I love that. I love that, you know, I love that there wasn't like the subplot with like a bully character, or that the dad, you know, wasn't like being like, oh, you know, you can't, you know, you guys can't be together and all that stuff. No, it's just simply a story about a young man who feels like he experiences true love for the first time, which just so happens to be with another man. And Portrait of a Lady on Fire, that's another great one in my opinion. That movie is about a woman painter who is tasked with painting this heiress, and then who's about to get married to this rich, wealthy man. And the heiress and the painter, you know, they're both women and they fall in love and all that stuff. And we never see the husbands, the soon-to-be husbands. In fact, we don't see really any male characters in the movie. It's just, you know, these women basically just spending a few days together, at first not getting along, but then they do get along, and then they fall in love, and you know, all that stuff. But I really like that, you know, again, we didn't see any prejudice against them, which can be, you know, a stereotype for straight men, white male characters in other movies. But again, in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, we didn't see any prejudiced, bigoted characters against them, and any prejudice against them. Actually, gay prejudice wasn't referenced at all. What actually was referenced was prejudice, sexism, bigotry against women, because basically a lot of film scenes are basically about you know, like how limited women's roles were, especially like, you know, in the 1800s when the movie takes place. So it's a female empowerment story that also features a same-sex couple. And like Call Me by Your Name and Portrait of a Lady on Fire are two great examples, in my opinion, that have good representation for LGBT community because it's subtle and it feels more realistic. It doesn't just feel like, oh, it's great to be gay, but we're also going to show these gay characters being, you know, hated against or beaten because of them being gay. And I'm like, I've seen that too many. I know that happens in real life, but it just no longer feels realistic when I see it in a movie.
Yeah, as a woman who is part of the LGBT community, I am sick and tired of seeing the classic trope of the gay kid having a hard time, nobody accepting them, and them going through that struggle. Like, of course, it's something that is important and that a majority of members of the LGBT community go through in their lives at one point or another, somebody not accepting them. But to make that the main thing that every movie about an LGBT character revolves around, it kind of gives off the impression that this is something that you're always going to have to struggle with, that you always have to worry about. Nobody is going to accept you until like this, and this happens. But we don't want to think that. We want to see more movies where that is not the main struggle. There should be, like, just have these characters going on about their lives and something else is their issue, not their identity being the whole issue.
There's a great quote from Todd Haynes, who directed one of my favorite LGBT movies, Carol, with Cate Blanchett. If you haven't seen Carol, I highly recommend it. It's a very slow, artsy movie, but I think it's really good. There's a great quote that he says where he's commenting on a movie called My Own Private Idaho, where the late River Phoenix and Keanu Reeves play young gay hustlers. And Todd Haynes is commenting on this movie, My Own Private Idaho, and he's saying that throughout the movie, it feels like them being gay is actually like a bad weight on them or a crutch or a negative aspect about them until a crucial campfire scene later in the movie where basically then the two main characters talking about, you know, why they like that being gay is who they are, and that, you know, their desire to be accepted for who they are. And basically, like, I'm really paraphrasing here because that scene is a lot more complex and wordy than what I'm saying here, but basically Todd Haynes is praising the campfire scene for basically elevating the material and making these characters feel more like real people, more like people who are gay and unfortunately have to suffer for it due to other people's prejudice, and not them suffering because they're like not, you know, oh, like because they're gay they're suffering. Basically the movie, that campfire scene helps show these gay characters as suffering because of like the negative state of the world or others' prejudice, and not, you know, them being gay has ruined their lives. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of movies that take the focus off of the struggle of being gay, like it's a bad thing, and make it more about the struggles that gay people go through, but like not with identity crisis. Like Booksmart is a really good movie in general, but also
I
it
love
also
Booksmart so
features.
much.
Oh, I love that movie. I could watch it over and over again. But one of the characters is gay, and it's not, she isn't struggling with the fact that she is gay. She's struggling with the fact that, does the girl that she have a crush on, is she also gay? So she goes throughout the entire movie as like kind of like a subplot, trying to figure out, oh, is that girl gay? Like, let me try to find out. It's like really comical, it's really lighthearted. And then there's another issue, not an issue, but like there's this other part where she goes through like her first time like being with a girl, and like that's all things that people can relate to in one way or in another, whether you're gay or not, like your first time with somebody. And it's just something super relatable, like finding out, does the person like you back, do they have any interest in you? It doesn't have to be like strictly a gay issue. It's something everyone can kind of relate to in one way or another.
That's definitely something that I really like, is that when through I can relate to stuff even if not every aspect of a movie or scene is part
Yeah, you're not a gay
life.
woman, but you were able to relate to her.
Yeah, you know, definitely. I could definitely relate to Caitlin Dever's character in Booksmart. I could definitely relate to the main character, Timothée Chalamet's character in Call Me by Your Name. I could definitely relate to Sharon, the main character in Moonlight, which Moonlight, just amazing
Moonlight
movie.
covers a lot of inclusivity that we could talk about.
Definitely, yeah, definitely inclusivity, good gay representation, good
person of color.
Yes, exactly.
poverty, all that other stuff, just going throughout life, growing up with being who you are.
Yeah, I think that even though I'm not, even though I'm not gay, even though I'm not a person of color, even though I'm not a woman, there are moments in films that feature good representation for all these different groups, types of people, where I can still relate to it because they were very human, real moments. Pivoting back to when Hollywood, when studio intervention is a bad thing. I'm sorry if you love Disney, I'm sorry. And I love Disney too, but we just have to keep going back to Disney because they keep effing up. They try so hard but it doesn't feel real. Like I
Yeah.
don't like in the original. So in a recent episode, I talked about what the live action Disney movie remakes with my friend Mary Ann, and we talked about, like, she shared her opinions, I shared mine, and for that episode I filmed very recently. So it was only like about a month ago when I recorded and released that episode, and so to prepare for that, I rewatched not just the remakes but the originals on Disney Plus, and I just see that I wasn't just being blinded by nostalgia and going into these movies. I mean, I was already, for a lot of these movies, I'm not looking forward to them because I have such a reverence and nostalgia for the original, but I rewatched the originals and was astounded at how, I still love them. Not just I still love them, but how well written and made that they are and how interesting the characters are. And with the remakes, a lot of the characters are hollow shells and of the originals, and either just feel like copy and paste and like not real people to me. Like it's kind of sad
Mhm.
that a cartoon lion feels connects with me, resonates with me more emotionally than a real creepy looking lion. It's sad that cartoon characters like Aladdin feel more real to me than an actual Aladdin person who just feels like a main character in a product.
I don't know if it's because, like, with cartoons, you could animate the faces, like, with expressions better, but that kind of doesn't really give the Aladdin movie an excuse because if they're real people with real facial expressions, I could understand The Lion King not having any relatableness to it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But before we continue to bash Disney, can I just bring up some, like, this one movie where they did a good job of being inclusive or just showing something for, like, women
Yeah,
empowerment?
yeah, sure, go ahead.
Um, yeah, the only credit I'm going to give Disney in this episode is Hercules, specifically the character Meg. She's this independent woman who actually she brings up like a good point that she isn't a damsel in distress who needs this man to save her. Given later in the movie he does wind up saving her, but she gives this message that stands out to a lot of people saying not every woman needs to be saved by a man. They can be strong enough to stand up on their own. And I think they did a pretty good job at relaying that message at that one scene.
It's actually kind of funny that you bring up Meg from Hercules because I was actually going to bring that up as a negative example because
Ooh,
I feel
okay.
like I feel like they it just had one scene with her being like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh yeah, I'm so independent, cool, tough, and all that, and I don't need no man to save me." But like you brought up, she ends up needing to be saved by Hercules,
Yes.
and it's just like I don't know, just like I feel like they just wrote
She
one
kind of contradicts
scene.
herself.
Yeah, one scene where she's an interesting character, and the whole rest of the movie, she is the damsel in
She's a damsel
distress.
in distress again.
Yeah,
That
so I
is a
was
trope that Disney brings up a lot, that the damsel in distress trope.
Yeah, yeah, and even in there some of the movies where the main character, is an interesting female character, like Ariel in The Little Women. Later on, she ends up becoming a damsel in distress herself and needs to be saved by Prince Eric. Well,
Hmm.
granted, she saved him earlier in the movie, but still, you know, it's like, eh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Disney. As much as I love Disney now, like yeah, a lot of people like probably stopped listening, being like, "Oh, you keep bashing Disney," but like Disney was my childhood. Disney was my childhood too. I'm saying all this stuff because I want Disney to be better. I love Disney and I want them to do better. I want them to really improve in terms of their representation. And like I think occasionally they do. Coco and Moana had really great
Great movies.
Coco for Mexico and Moana for I forget the name of that like culture, but like the
Hmm.
Samoan culture, I think. But anyway, so like those movies did a really good job, and like they didn't make it so obvious with Moana. You know, like Moana, like even though it's the she's a woman main character, they didn't make it so obvious as like, oh, she's a fierce, strong, independent because she's a woman. No, they just had her being an ordinary girl who goes on this adventure, but also had it be a female character to really resonate with little girls out there. And so like
Hmm.
yeah, Moana, uh Coco, oh, and Zootopia. But
Oh yes.
I think that movie does a great job of teaching kids, basically as an anti-racism message that's told
Hmm.
symbolically, metaphorically, really well through these animal characters. And I think that
Yeah,
the
there's a lot you could learn from Zootopia.
yeah, exactly. And so sometimes Disney does a good job, but I feel like I don't know. Like I feel like the positive movies from Disney were more so when when more so when I mean I could be wrong. Maybe there was a studio intervention with Moana and Zootopia, and Coco, but I feel like those movies succeeded because Disney actually backed off a little. And
Hmm.
I'm sure that there are positive examples of studio intervention where if the studio intervened and actually turned out to be the better decision creatively, but overall I think that filmmakers should be given basically all the creative freedom.
With like Disney, everyone's saying that Disney was their childhood, and that kind of course, like Disney is our most people's childhoods, but they kind of catered more towards like the young white children because they had like all their white princesses and whatnot. But there was like Mulan, but it didn't really focus on what it meant to be a Chinese woman. The whole movie took place in China with Chinese characters. It wasn't until, I think I might be wrong, but Princess and the Frog, until we got characters of different races and skin colors, and the main character was a black woman. And I remember at the time when everyone was like, "Oh, Disney's first black princess," and it got a lot of backlash. Long story short, but it was also something that was really powerful because little girls finally got that black princess they needed to look up to. They were in, well, where were they? I think Atlanta,
New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Yeah, New
Yes, yeah, they
Orleans
were.
maybe.
Yeah, so it was old, like not recent times, because everyone was able to still do whatever they were doing, but there were white characters, there were black characters. I don't recall if there were any other ethnicities in that movie, but it was a mix. So people were finally able to see this black character in the white man's world type of thing.
It's interesting that you bring up Hercules as a positive example and Mulan as a kind of negative example because I actually really like how they portrayed Mulan. I actually really
I mean,
like that they
I
had
didn't
Chinese
say.
culture. Sorry?
Um, I didn't mean like Mulan was a bad example. I meant like it doesn't really show inclusivity because it was in like a Chinese world. It wasn't like a black woman in a white man's world type of thing. Because everyone in that movie was like from China.
Well, I would argue that with Mulan, they had I mean, it wasn't necessarily inclusive, as in they included, other races or
Hmm.
other like groups or whatnot. But I think that Mulan is a very an interesting main character and has an empowering message because Mulan is no because yeah I mean Mulan I would actually no I think it is inclusive in a way because Mulan is essentially a woman in
In
a
a man,
man's
yeah,
world,
you're right.
literally. And
Yeah,
basically,
you're right.
Mulan starts out as an ordinary woman, but because she wants
Mhm,
her father to live, she ends up taking her father's place as a soldier and pretends to be a man. And she's an ordinary woman. And she you really see her struggling, especially in the "I'll make a man out of you" montage. But in that same
mhm,
montage, she trains, she perseveres, and then she's able to become an awesome soldier and still be an interesting character through perseverance and through selflessness by sacrificing her life essentially so that her
mhm.
father's life can be spared. And that's what I really didn't like about the Mulan remake is that
They kind of
literally in
threw
the
that out of the
beginning,
window.
yeah, literally in the beginning, basically they bring up all this stuff about chi, and like literally in the opening of the movie, we see Mulan as a little girl doing all these cool like kung fu tricks and like all that, and it's like they stripped away what made Mulan an interesting character in the
Mhm,
original animated classic, and I would argue that like Disney is like being like, oh yeah, Mulan like is like empowering to women. At least that the new one. And it's like I would argue that Mulan actually will alienate a lot of their like little girls out there because I feel like many little girls will watch Mulan, the original, and be like, oh, through hard work. Just like Mulan, I can be like Mulan. Maybe not,
mhm.
be a soldier or do all those cool like kung fu tricks, but just like Mulan, through like hard work and perseverance, I can also be, a powerful woman. And I feel like little girls watching Wonder Woman can think like that as well. But unfortunately, I think that little girls will watch Captain Marvel and the Mulan live action remake and think, oh man, like they're so cool, and I'll never be able to be like that. So why should I try?
Yeah. I guess, like, long story short, the difference between the original animated Mulan and then Captain Marvel and then the live action Mulan is that in the animated version, like you said, like, she works hard, and the moral of the story is you can survive in a man's world because you are, like, you're just as good as them. They're not better than you, you're not better than them. It's with hard work, you can be a better person.
Exactly.
But with the live actions, yeah, in the live actions, it's already like, oh, Mulan's already better than everybody.
Yeah,
She didn't
yeah.
have to try.
Mulan's already better than everybody. Captain Marvel is kind of already better than everybody, and it's just like, and I feel like like studios, especially Disney, in an attempt to have positive representation and present positive messages, because I don't think that Disney is being malicious, but I feel like they're extremely misguided because their efforts, I think, ultimately alienate many of the audiences that they're targeting. Like, I think that
Hmm.
studio intervention throughout movie history is bad because these studios think that they're going to attract more people and make more money by including, certain tropes, certain trends, certain representation, but ultimately they alienate many of their audiences. I feel like
Hmm.
by
Yeah,
like by forcing directors, writers, filmmakers to include certain things.
yeah. A common term you'll hear with these type of things is queer baiting. I don't know if you know what queer baiting is.
Yeah, I do.
So for those who don't know, queer baiting, like fishing, you throw out the bait. For example, it's in Disney's Onward. Hey, Disney's first openly gay character. So we take the bait, we learn, okay, there's this character, I gotta watch this movie, and then they start reeling you in. Once you get to that door, aka watching the movie, you find out it's just a bunch of disappointment. It's just this one character that was in there for 5 minutes, maybe even less.
Yeah.
So with Onward, like they said, it was their first openly gay character. That's all you saw on like all these like queer news pages. I follow this one called Pink News, and every other day they would post about it, and I would see it all over Facebook. Gay character, gay character. So I'm like, oh, gotta check it out. And when people finally checked it out, it was this character. All she said to imply that she was gay. It was like, oh yeah, my girlfriend, something, something, blah, blah, blah. And then she was never heard from ever again. So it made people think that this character was going to be like some important character that had a recurring role in the movie, but in reality, it was just bait.
Yeah, and I think that Disney or like will does occasionally have good intentions, but I just think I think that Disney should either just not like queer bait, or if they are going to have like representation, gay characters, like make it more realistic, fleshed out
Mm-hmm.
characters and better representation so that you don't end up offending both sides.
Yeah.
But before we wrap things up, though, do you have any like final comments on inclusivity in media or like studio interference?
I would say we definitely need more inclusivity because times are changing. All these things we're seeing actually exist in the world, and people need to be more accepting of all these new movies, including people of color, people of the LGBT community. But production studios just need to keep in mind that make it relatable, make it somebody that people are going to enjoy seeing on screen and not complain about. And if it's somebody that they can't relate to, it kind of just drags your movie down because that's all people are going to talk about is that, hey, they baited us with this character that isn't relatable in the slightest. What do they think they're doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Me personally, I want to see more representation, but in a more subtle, but not too subtle, where it's only in the
Mm-hmm.
movie for like 5 seconds, and realistic slash relatable representation. And I mean, we're definitely gonna get more studio interference in the future, but I hope that studios will eventually learn and give more creative freedom to the filmmakers. Like
Yeah.
where it's like the filmmakers have most of the creative freedom, and I think that I think there are rare examples where the studios will give the filmmakers too much creative freedom, like A24, the studio behind the Moonlight and Ex Machina, and Uncut Gems. Sometimes they give their filmmakers too much creative freedom, where they let their filmmakers do whatever, and then the films end up really jumbled or disjointed. And there
You
are
kind of forget what it's about.
yeah, and there are rare examples, like with some A24 films where maybe more studio interference was needed, but for the most part, I think less studio interference is better, and we do need more representation for people of color, people in the LGBT community, people of certain like races or groups and all that, but make it more relatable and not just stereotypish or gimmicky.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the more that we start, like, not saying that every movie needs to have every member of every type of category, but the more we start seeing these characters written well, of course, not forced, the more accepting of like the human race is going to start to become because now they see all these people, it's a part of life, and they're going to be more accepting towards those who actually exist in their lives of those categories.
Yeah, exactly. And movies are very influential. I think that, like when people say, "Oh, it's just a movie." Nah, man, like I said before, I learn a lot from movies. I want to teach positive life lessons and have good role models in all the movies that I make when I hopefully become a movie director. And like I've learned a lot from movies, and movies have influenced my life a lot, and I've learned some very good life lessons. As a Christian, I've learned a lot about tolerance and all that from like obviously from real life examples, but from movies too. So like yeah, I think that movies are a really powerful thing, and I hope to see more like big movies from big studios where there wasn't as much interference and where they have more realistic and also good representation. All right, well, that'll conclude today's episode of Podcast Racing. Thank you again, Jamie, for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'd love to have you again sometime.
Of course, yes. This is my first podcast ever, and I had a really good experience.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really happy about that. All right, well, then thank you all out there for listening. I hope you're all staying safe out there. Bye.